Welcome to Scorched Earth, a brutal desert where the weather is now your enemy and death awaits at every turn. In this barren land, wyverns dominate the skies, and survival is a feat on its own. I've set out to complete the ultimate taming challenge, taming everything from the tiny jerboa to the towering titanosaur. 3 artifacts stand between me and my final goal. Can I do it all and take down the ultimate boss, or will the desert claim me first? Only one way to find out, kittizens. Call that like button and let's get into this. Spawning in didn't go as smoothly as it did on the island map. That was a walk in the park compared to this. Here, I'm sprinting for my life as random creatures take hefty bites out of my health bar. Death after death after death. Even my computer seems to be sweating under this heat. Once that's fixed, it's down to business. And let me tell you, business is anything but smooth. I thought this was supposed to be the easy zone. After countless deaths, I'm finally able to gather basics. I start gathering bushes for berries, cactus for cactus sap, okay, that's new, and with a little extra searching, a stone to make a pickaxe. Armed with my new tool, I start mining rocks and get sand? 2 new resources already, cactus sap and sand. Not sure how useful they'll be, but I bet they'll come in handy someday. I craft a hatchet, a spear, and a campfire. Next up, midjo berries. I need those to start taming dinos. I've got to have friends in this hostile place after all, right? Then it hits me, literally. When I whack a cactus with my pick, it splashes me in the face with water. I guess it's the desert's own little life hack for the early game. And not a moment too soon because I am cooking alive under this sun. Just when I think things are slightly under control, I spot a raptor in the distance, and my brain says, sneak around it. No big deal. So I try, but I get distracted by these camel things. They're fascinating. While watching them, the raptor decides I'm its next meal and leaves me in the dark. Another respawn, another death, and this turns into a vicious cycle. At this point, I figure if I'm gonna keep dying, I might as well look good doing it. I craft some cloth armor, including a hat, which I, true to my brand, immediately forgot exists. I manage to stay alive long enough to craft a bow and some arrows. A purple drop catches my eye, and I bolt for it, only to find out that I'm not the right level. Not even close. And I leave feeling dejected. Water quickly becomes an issue. My supply is draining faster than my morale, and running is only making it worse. Desperate for some semblance of progress, I tame a Lystrosaurus, the slowest, most chill dino around. By the time I make it back to camp, I'm ready to drink the entire pond of dry, delicious, hot sand water. Just what I want on a scorching day like this. Feeling a tiny bit safer, I leave the Lystro to defend the newly claimed land while I go off to hunt for things to murderize. I need a bola and a mortar and pestle, both of which require hide. So, some arrows are crafted and I set off on a quest for something that won't try to kill me. Despite quenching my thirst back at home, the desert heat has me parched again in no time. Luck strikes in the form of a water bug. Drinking from a bug butt isn't exactly my first choice, but it's better than dying of thirst. As evening falls, I spot a parasaur. This might be my chance to get a more useful tame, but it's too quick and robust. I might as well be chucking toothpicks at a tank. Instead, I find another Lystro, and it's the perfect mate for the one I've already got. Next up the list, the cute jerboa that makes funny sounds to alert you of weather changes. Just as the 3 of us are headed home, a raptor darts past us, hot on the heels of a cow. We try to get out of the way, but the cow, in a fit of panic, bolts straight towards us. Thanks, cow. Now, the raptor's attention shifts to me, and suddenly, I'm on the menu instead. It lunges at me, and I'm scrambling to defend myself. This is it. I'm gonna die again. But miraculously, with the help of my trusty little Lystro, I survive. Now, from the raptor, I have the hide I need to keep moving forward. As I catch my breath and look up, it seems to ignore us for now, so we seize the opportunity and make a swift return home. The temperature is dropping dramatically, and the cold starts biting at my fingers and toes. I quickly place down a campfire and relish the warmth as it crackles to life. Just as I start to relax, thinking maybe, just maybe, I can have a peaceful moment. Well, that's just fantastic. Respawning far from home and still shivering, I realized I did not craft a bed. What a rookie mistake. But hey, silver linings. I stumble upon a vulture, and after offering some spoiled meat to it, I have a new companion. Little do I know, she's about to become one of the MVPs of this whole mess. The trek back to the camp is cold, awkwardly punctuated by squawks from my new flying friend. Along the way, I find another jerboa. Naturally, I can't resist. I tame him, and he follows me home, excited for his new life of safety. Just as we get near the camp, a message pops up. One of your lystros has been killed by a wolf. The new jerboa is probably rethinking his decisions now. The cold finally lets up as I arrive home, my last remaining lystro giving me a look that says, "You had one job," and I start gathering materials to build the campfire, hoping for at least a moment of respite. But the wildlife here has other plans. A saber-toothed tiger emerges from the shadows. It lunges at us, and in the ensuing chaos, I accidentally killed the poor jerboa that I just tamed. He squeaks in betrayal and collapses next to me. I'm the worst pet owner ever. I really am. My health is plummeting, so I decide just to step back and become a spectator in my own life. I watch as the vulture and my lystro take on the saber-tooth, and wouldn't you know it, my vulture swoops in for the final blow. I told you, an MVP. With the immediate danger gone, I realize it's time to find another female lystro and a new male jerboa to replace my recent casualties. So I set off once again. But, like a cat distracted by a toy, I get sidetracked by some objects on the ground. Silica pearls. Shiny. Who knows what misadventures await me in this desert. But if I can find joy in taming vultures and collecting shiny things, maybe, just maybe, we have a fighting chance. If you thought the chaos was over, buckle up. Things are about to get a whole lot worse. Just as I'm starting to feel a tiny bit secure, a saber-tooth decides it's time to avenge its fallen friend, and it comes out of nowhere lunging straight at me. My lystro, bless its tiny heart, throws itself into the fray to protect me. In a tragic twist, it sacrifices itself, joining its partner in the great beyond. The saber leaves me hanging by a thread, my health bar practically non-existent. Thanks to the vulture on my shoulder, and my sacrificial friends though, we remain victorious. Now, I'm hungry, bleeding from places I didn't even know could bleed, and dehydrated. I shoved fistfuls of berries into my mouth, hoping to stave off the thirst, but it's like trying to put a wildfire out with a spray bottle. Utterly ineffective. I craft a campfire and cook up some meat from my recent encounters. The warmth is comforting, but it only makes my dehydration worse. At least I won't starve to death, even though I feel like a dried up raisin left out in the sun. By the early morning hours, I am in dire need of water. With no other options, I limp my way back to the original camp, the one blessed with the precious pond. The thought of quenching my thirst is the only thing keeping me going. In the lonely hours of day 2, I stuff my face full of meat. Some people might say it's an unhealthy way to handle your emotions, but it certainly helped me. Now that I'm feeling better, gathering stone is next on the agenda, and it's much safer than gathering the hide. I managed to get enough of these to craft my mortar and pestle and a bola. While hunting for hide, I also collected enough to make a full set of hide armor. I put the new gear on, feeling more protected, though I soon find out that leather is one of the worst armor you can wear on this map. I have a sneaking suspicion death is not quite done with me yet, so I throw down a few sleeping bags. Better safe than sorry, right? Nearby, a parasaur is just minding its own business, while my mind comes up with ideas. I go off to gather berries, but return with pockets full of sand, and I have to offload it into a chest. Note to self, sand is way heavier than it looks. My original goal was to tame that parasaur. True to my brand, though, I get distracted by killing a bug for chitin and forgot all about the parasaur. I do manage to craft a forge and plan on crafting a smithy next, which requires metal. While gathering metal, I find yet another female lystro. Given my track record, I probably should not have tamed her, but I did. Take bets in the comments on how long she'll last. After hauling the metal back, I get it smelting. Then I remember the AA bench has a smithy, and it's way more efficient than the normal smithy. So, after another water run, I craft the bench. Just as I'm about to set it up, a white supply drop catches my eye. I dash over to it and snag an ascendant cloth hat. But the constant need for water is getting to me again. Seriously, here's a montage of me running to various water sources for the rest of the playthrough, so I don't waste your time repeating it either. Dehydration has officially become my arch nemesis. Realizing that my current base location just isn't cutting it due to the whole, constantly dying of thirst thing, I decided I needed to move closer to the reliable water source. I mark the new spot with a flag and begin the arduous process of relocating. I craft and place several AA items to streamline my operation. Things are starting to look up, or so I thought. As I'm organizing and setting things up, a message flashes across my screen. Remember that lystro? Oh, there's a freaking Daedon over at my stuff. Over there. Friggin' rude. Fantastic. And now a Daedon has claimed my old camp as its own. Just great. I gather some materials and get back to setting everything up. And one of the items I placed is ridiculously hard to access. I tried moving it to a table, which requires a foundation, and spoiler alert, it doesn't make a darn difference. Here's hoping the following days bring a bit more luck, or at least fewer predators hungry for my tames. Yeah, we both know that's not happening. As day 3 moves in, it's time to avenge what feels like my 8 millionth Lystro. I set out to find the pesky pig, the Daedon that's been terrorizing my camp. And there it is, waddling around like it owns the place. Not today, bacon breath. I whip up my bola and surprise, it actually works on the pig? Who knew? With it immobilized, I start raining arrows into its face while my vulture hovers above, providing moral support. Fun fact, vultures don't attack unless something attacks you first, so mine just casually floats there like, you got this, boss. With the Daedon finally down, I head back to camp to collect my things. That's when I discover another quirk about vultures. They're a one-way storage system. You can take stuff out, but you can't put it back in. Not exactly helpful when you're trying to haul a bunch of junk, so I decide to load up my Borgia boa with as much as it can carry. Genius plan, right? Except I completely forgot about it. Moments later, a red message flashes across my screen. Are you kidding me? You son of a biscuit! I was gone for 5 seconds! Another Daedon has swooped in and snatched my buddy's life. I'm seriously considering opening up a bacon shop at this point. I head back to the scene of the crime, bola in hand, ready to avenge my Jerboa. But my vulture has apparently decided to take a mini vacation and flown away somewhere. Fantastic. The Daedon breaks free of my first bola, and I attempt to throw another, forgetting that bolas have a cooldown. And it chases me into the night. And I'm about to accept my fate when finally my vulture comes back from vacation, fashionably late, and helps me finish off the Daedon. Better late than never, I suppose. With that ordeal behind me, my health bar is hanging on by a thread again. I decided not to let it stop me. I set out to find another female Lystro. It doesn't take long, and soon I have her tamed up. While waiting for her to waddle back to camp, I start setting up the base properly. The idea of crafting behemoth gates crosses my mind. If I can surround my camp with those, maybe, just maybe, I'll get some peace from these relentless attacks. Along the way, I find another Jerboa to replace my lost companion, and I tame her. I safely escort her back to camp, feeling a flicker of progress. With the base finally relocated to my new spot near the water, things are starting to look up. Then I spot a purple drop in the distance. These have high-level loot, but I'm not sure if I'm high enough level for it. Curiosity gets the better of me, so I head over there, only to get ambushed by overgrown, angry chickens. Terror birds. My health plummets, but somehow I managed to survive on a sliver of health. Turns out I just need one more level to access the drop. I level up, open it, and while the loot isn't amazing, the fact I can access it feels like a win. On the way back, a Pegomastax jumps me. Not today, Klepto. I hit it with a bola, knock it out, add him to the team. The sun rises on day 4, and I tame another Jerboa. Critter crew restored. Feeling optimistic, I set out to gather materials for the behemoth gates again. Exploring a bit further, I come face to face with a saber. We square off, and in the end, I win. And it drops me metal tools for my troubles. Also, fun fact, vultures attack from your shoulder. Very handy when you're in the middle of nowhere and need some quick backup. While I'm out there, I find a water vein, a lifesaver in this desert. But before I can relax, heat stroke hits me like a truck. It's probably best just to stick close to home until it passes, but of course, I can't help myself. I spot a green supply drop nearby and risk it. The reward? Ascendant Desert Cloth Boots. Perfect for mitigating the heat. Nice. With enough materials gathered, I finally craft a couple of behemoth gates and set them around my base. Ah, sweet security. At least that's what I think for about 5 seconds. Switching my focus, I realize that taming certain creatures require veggies, which means it's time to build a proper garden. So I craft some crop plots and start working on adobe structures to withstand the heat. I even start planting a greenhouse over the water. The perfect spot. Halfway through my construction, my Jerboa starts chittering. I'm not sure what that means, but it seems important. Then, I craft a reusable tent. I try to push through, continuing to build. This, unfortunately, doesn't work very well. A heat wave hits, and I have to take cover. I even tried stripping down to my underwear, and I was still hot. Desperate, I tried to take a dip in the pool, and even that offers zero relief. Eventually, the heat wave ends on its own. But seriously, I should just move to a cooler climate. I don't know, maybe Antarctica? I finished constructing the adobe house for my plants, harvest some seeds, and even craft a toilet, because, you know, an ARK, a toilet acts like a fertilizer silo, at least in this mod. Super efficient, actually. After all, efficiency is key when you're barely surviving. Feeling productive, I head towards another supply drop. But surprise! A Thylacoleo gets there first. Before I know it, I'm its latest victim. Back at home, after yet another death, I craft even more beds, because clearly I'll be needing them. I set up a repair station behind my tent to fix the gear the Thyla destroyed. And because I'm a glutton for punishment, I head back to face that same Thyla. Because, you know, third time's a charm, right? This time I actually make it to the drop without getting shredded. And let me tell you, it is so worth it. Greenhouse structures. Now I have crystal that I need. I head home starting to feel triumphant when, wait for it, I run into a Capro. And you guessed it, the Thyla again. There is no death counter in this one because the death count is officially too high. I managed to take out the Capro, but the Thyla gets me once more. With my bed on cooldown, I respawn in no man's land. The desert is not feeling merciful today. As I stumble around trying to make my way back to camp, I find something ridiculous. Cow eggs. Yes, cow eggs. Because that makes sense. I collect the eggs and continue, trying to not question the absurdity of it. Back at base, I craft a grappling bow and a crossbow, planning my next big move, crafting a long neck rifle. But first, I need a lot more metal, so I head out to gather some. Along the way, I bump into Gallimimus, and because I still haven't learned my lesson, I try to bullet it. Spoiler alert, Gallimimuses cannot be bulleted, so I abandon it and go back to gathering metal. Finally, the day comes when the Kitizens tribe is officially formed, uniting my tames and my channel under one glorious banner. With the tribe in place, I need crystal for soul balls, so I break down some of the greenhouse walls I've gotten from the drops. I craft a super spyglass and use the leftover crystal for the all-important soul balls. Next on the list, taming a Procoptodon, aka the kangaroo. But there's a slight hitch in my plan. I need pelt for the saddle, and that means hunting down some wolves. But because I get distracted easily, I turn my attention back to my garden. Why isn't it growing? I've planted seeds. I think I've done everything right, but nothing is happening. Frustrated, I tab out for a moment to check if I've done something wrong, and wouldn't you know it, a superheat sneaks up on me while I'm gone. I scramble back into the game trying to find shelter, but for some reason, the adobe house is not working. I even removed the greenhouse walls, but nope, I'm still overheating. Fed up, I just craft more beds, because apparently that's my solution to everything. I repaired my gear and hid inside of a tent until the heat is gone. At some point, a cow wanders into my base, and in frustration, I smash it in the face, which, thanks to ARK's wonky hitboxes, also kills my very own jerboa. Fan-freaking-tastic. Now, I need another jerboa. While searching for a replacement, I spot a tech parasaur. These things are shiny and full of valuable resources, so naturally, I take it down. But then, I ended up aimlessly wandering around, accomplishing very little and getting thoroughly lost. Eventually, I do find some jerboas, but they're dangerously close to a pack of hyenas, and these guys hit hard. I managed to kill all but one of them, and the one that runs off, I consider taming it, but my water levels are critically low. A jug bug offers temporary relief, but I know that I need a real water source. In desperation, I try killing a cow to tap into its water reserves, but my vulture, always eager, eats the corpse before I can drink from it. Plan B, head to the nearest water source. As I make my way there, I get bitten by an ant which slows me down, and then a saber-tooth comes out of nowhere to wreck all of my armor. Now, I'm thirsty, cold, slow, naked, and actively being hunted. Great, thankfully, the saber-tooth is just as destructible as I am, and he goes after a doed instead. So I make a break for it. I finally reach the water, which is heavily guarded. I manage to take a quick drink before being sent back to the respawn screen. Well, at least I'm not thirsty anymore. Back at base, I tame yet another male jerboa. As day 6 dawns, I decide to craft flak armor, thinking it would give me an edge. Spoiler alert, this is a terrible decision. Think about it. Wearing metal armor in the scorching sun? Am I a genius? Or no? But undeterred, I head out into the desert to tame more vultures. I get a couple, because it's been suggested that a vulture armor would be amazing, and honestly, I couldn't agree more. On the way to get a drink, I tame another male lystro and kill a sheep, only to realize that mutton doesn't stack, and I have to wait for it to spoil so that I can then decimate an entire school of fish for kibble ingredients. Next, I find a moss chops that wants rare mushrooms to tame. But of course, I don't have any of those. Not far away, I find another moss chops that only wants tinto berries, which I do have, so I tame it. After an embarrassing amount of time searching for rare mushrooms, I give up, and wouldn't you know it, I open a drop, and there's mushrooms. Go figure. Suffering from heat stroke now because I'm wearing a metal oven, I rely on nearby water to keep me going. I return to tame the first moss chops and then start heading back when a Rex decides I look like lunch. On the bright side, it gives me a shortcut back to base. On the downside, it destroyed all my armor. I plan another trip to the desert with Palmer, but pigs have other plans, and I'm sent back to my base again. I resign myself to wait till morning. I craft a fabricator for future use, and things just keep getting more interesting as another heat wave hits in the middle of the night. Seriously, ARK? A heat wave? At night? Does this game even follow logic? The relentless heat wave shows no sign of letting up as day breaks. I drag myself out into the scorching desert, determined to find a Procoptodon to tame. Just when I think the day might be as unforgiving as the last, I see it, right outside my base. A max-level kangaroo, just chilling as if it owns the place. My heart skips a beat and I cannot hold back my excitement. This is it. This is my moment. Without a second thought, I grab my gear and charge out there, dead set on making him mine. But of course, it's never that simple. The chase is on. This guy has no intention of going down easy, and for what feels like hours, I'm sprinting after him as he zigzags across the desert like he's in some kind of rue marathon. Just when I think I'm about to lose him for good, he makes a rookie mistake trapping himself in a small rock crevice. That's my opening. A few trank shots later and he drops. I officially kick off day 7, which happens to be my lucky number, with the best tame I could have hoped for, a max level Roo. I saddle him up, grinning from ear to ear, and ride him triumphantly back to base. But surprises are not over. As I trot back to camp, what do I see? A female Roo, just wandering around like she's been waiting for me. I waste no time, but before she can hop off, I knock her out and add her to the team. What a day. 7 really is my lucky number after all. Things are finally starting to look up for once, and it feels like my luck is going in the right direction. There's a wolf harassing an Anki near the drop. I decide this new Roo deserves a name with some respect. After all, he's gonna be my right-hand Roo for a while. I give him the name of Dundee, one of Australia's finest. I'd say he's got the spirit for it, don't you? He's a legend at gathering berries, and I need loads of those to speed up the rest of this challenge. After a painfully slow start, I'm itching to wrap up this Scorched Earth adventure. But first, I've got some noisy, unwanted visitors in my base to deal with. Time to teach them the quiet game, permanently. I have plenty of trank arrows, but if I want to pack a bigger punch, it's time to think about trank darts. The problem is, I need a solid stash of narcoberries, and after checking my garden, I don't have any. But I head out on Dundee and rake in a lot of them. By the time day 7 wraps up, we've got enough to craft a hefty batch of narcotics. And just when I think it's been a very eventful day, my vulture surprises me with a midnight omelet by laying an egg on my head. One egg, okay, unexpected, cute. Another, then another, then another. Okay, that's enough omelets for the night. With narcotics made, I set to work on trank darts. But of course, another setback. I'm short on metal, and in this barren wasteland, that's a pain to gather. An Anki would be a lifesaver, but it's on tier 3, and I've barely made a dent in tier 1. I guess I'll have to wait on that one. Knowing taming is going to be in my life for a little while, I whip up as many soul balls as I can with the leftover crystal I have. Out in the wild, I spot a thorny dragon, and I can't resist testing Dundee's melee. It's brawl time. And not only does Dundee not disappoint me, he is holding his own like a champ. Maybe I should have named him Rocky Balboa. One challenger down, then another, and the third barely puts a scratch on him. At last, some wins. For the first time, I feel like things might actually be turning in my favor. But of course, ARK has other plans. Suddenly, I'm swarmed by a whole gang of creatures. And, well, Dundee's powerful kicks keep them at bay. And soon, the whole crew is down. Dundee is still standing solid as a rock. Up ahead, I spot a purple drop, but a Carno is lurking nearby. Now, Dundee's handled the smaller stuff so far, but this Carno can pack a heavy punch and a nasty bleed. I want that drop though, and I'm not about to let some oversized lizard boss me around. Dundee's kicks keep it just out of range, and we slowly chip away at its health. Then, just to make it interesting, a Thylacoleo decides to jump in too. Apparently the Carno's got backup, but Dundee is relentless, and neither of them can break through his defenses. Finally, the Carno goes down. Now, Dundee versus the Thylacoleo, and with a bit of luck, Dundee takes it down too. If I wasn't confident before, I sure am now. With the area finally clear, I hop off to gather some hide and meat, only to be ambushed by a scorpion. Panic sets in as I bonk it in the head with a pickaxe, but my torpor rises fast, so just before I pass out, I scramble back onto Dundee, who clears it out for me. Talk about cutting it close. Finally, with the path clear, I reach the drop. And my reward? Well, not exactly the legendary loot I was hoping for, but it'll do for now. With the dawn of day 8, I spot another purple drop coming down not far off. Of course, there's a wolf harassing an Anki near the drop. Dundee makes quick work of the wolf, and once the drop touches down, I finally open it. Jackpot! More greenhouse parts. And very useful fur armor, because what do we always need in the desert but fur? The desert seems to be feeling generous, because there's another purple drop on the horizon. This one's even better. I find an Ascendant pistol and ammo for it. I also found an Ascendant Roo saddle, and it's perfect for Dundee. After clearing some more creatures in the area, I spot another drop in the distance. I make my way over and get a mix of supplies. Nothing that great, but I do get rare flowers, and that's exactly what I need for my future Microraptor tame. When I check my inventory, I realize the saddle that I got was an Ascendant saddle, and with a grin, I slap it on Dundee. I hadn't noticed it before. This adds an extra layer of protection to my amazing buddy. The sun is high in the sky, and it's baking me out here, but I'm not gonna let that slow me down. I reached the top of the mountain for the first time, and while I'd love to enjoy the view, there's no time for sightseeing. I came here for resources, and I start gathering a lot of crystal. And I also spot a stash of obsidian. On the way down, I nearly barrel into a rock golem. It doesn't seem to care about me much, but curiosity gets the better of me, and I decide to go back and give it a nudge. As expected, it's not thrilled and starts lumbering towards me. Dundee and I make a quick getaway. I'm back on the lookout for microraptors, and I see what I think are some, only to realize they're actually Archaeopteryx. I check my inventory to see if I have enough rare flowers, and surprisingly I have 17 from that earlier drop. Armed with my dart gun, I aim to put one of the microraptors asleep. It's only after knocking it out and I'm up close that I notice it's an Archaeopteryx. It takes me a minute to find chitin, but I tame that up instead now. I scoop that up and move on. While retracing my steps, I stumble upon a dung beetle. Sure, why not? Then I find another beetle and tame that one too. Now, that knocks another off the list. In the process, I accidentally ate a rare flower, and a nearby Lymantria, apparently offended, lets out a big cloud of stink right in my face. Thanks, moth. Finally, I'm getting into the rhythm when I glance up and nearly jump out of my skin. There is a wyvern flying over me. Somehow I missed it while wandering beneath its wings. I guess it decided I wasn't worth the trouble, so I quickly collected my things and left before it changed its mind. While sorting through inventory, I accidentally hit a wrong button and dropped everything I collected, and then hop away from the bag, not realizing that my entire inventory is sitting on the ground back there. It's only when I go to pick up a drop nearby that I notice my inventory is entirely empty. In complete denial, I mutter, "Where's my stuff? I didn't drop my stuff. What happened?" But yeah, no, I definitely did. Thankfully, sometimes I have a good memory and I managed to locate my lost items. The start of day 9 has me back at it with drops. Not far from base, I spot one coming down, so I hang around until it hits the ground. Not the most thrilling haul, but I guess it can come in handy. As I'm heading back, I run past a microraptor. This time, it's actually a microraptor. With a quick first shot, I try to follow up, but of course, I forgot my darts back on Dundee. I go back and retrieve them and line up the shot again. But right at that moment, a direwolf decides to crash my party. Dundee and my vulture take it out together. With the wolf handled, I get back to taming the microraptor. Female microraptor acquired. After that little victory, I check my list and realize I need a male microraptor, a male pego, and 2 parasaurs. Right on cue, I spot a male microraptor hiding out in a cactus bush. He tries to pull a hit and run, but I manage to get him with 1 shot. And now, both are tamed and I head home. Or so I thought. As I'm about to set off, a sandstorm blows in, covering everything in a thick layer of dust, including my pockets. I did manage to navigate through this, but it felt like a lost cause. However, when the sandstorm finally clears, I realize I'm only a short distance from the base. Turns out my sense of direction is actually pretty sharp. Once I'm back, I start looking around for a parasaur, getting lucky because there's one practically knocking at my base gates. After the first dart, she makes a break for it, but Dundee is so much faster, and I knock her out. Once tamed, I can easily get her back to base. Not far away, I found a male parasaur, and now both of those are off the list. The only thing left is the elusive male pego. Then I can move on to tier 2. The day slips by as I hunt high and low for a pego with no luck. By the late afternoon, I'm headed back to base and feeling the strain of the day's work still determined. As the sun sets, I'm finally back and decide it's time to stop living like a hobo in the desert and working on an adobe house. Or, well, a storage platform, as it will turn out to be, but that's a story for another day. I start crafting up some adobe structures so that I can build a base. I do get some of the base built, and then I realize that I'm really pressed for space, so I decided it's time to get organized. I set up a soul terminal to manage all of the dinos, making sure that it also picks up all of the things I want, like eggs and things like that. With everything in place, I introduce my new dinos to their spacious, automated apartments, where I can't see them anymore. They're set for life now, and they will never leave the terminal unless I need them. While going through supplies, I've found a few extra gateways I collected on runs, so I reinforced my base for added protection. Day 10, it is time to tackle some overdue organization. I start by setting up a row of OCD vaults to keep everything nice and neat. This takes a while. Now, it's here I need to mention my chat, because I have some really interesting conversations, and I don't even know where they came from. At one point, a topic veers into really weird territory. I'm barely following along when somebody in my chat drops the line, "Yeah, the placenta is a modified egg." And I repeated it. Cub, my friend and editor now, chimes in with a what? Honestly, I am starting to question my sanity. What was that about? After what feels like an eternity of vault organization, I notice some drops nearby, and ADHD takes the wheel, and I get a bunch of just random junk and drops. I spend most of day 11 also getting drops. Once my ADHD cools down, I go back home and sift through my spoils. I find a stack of tech structures from previous drops. I decide to place it down, and I get absolutely mesmerized by this tech door's glowy effects. Just Just watch. Oh my goodness. That's actually cool. Yeah, it's like a mini light show and it's distracting enough I almost forgot my original plan. I snap out of it though. My character is really thirsty. All the time I've spent organizing, it's honestly not a surprise. I'm overheating and thirsty and the heat stroke sets in and now my vision is blurry and I feel like I'm in a freaking funhouse or I have gotten into an adult beverage. So with day 12 rolling in, I'm prepared for the next taming tier, which means kibble. One problem, I need veggies, and for some reason, my greenhouse is still not working. So out of nowhere, it hits me. I did not build a greenhouse. I have been trying to grow crops in what is basically a fancy cellar. Plants don't grow in the dark. So I get to work crafting a proper greenhouse with walls and ceilings made of actual greenhouse materials. Thank God ARK plants don't die from neglect. Otherwise, I'd be screwed. Now the base is starting to shape up. I turn my attention back to trank darts. I craft a fresh batch to prepare for taming. I pull out my tracker mod to locate the final dino on this tier, a male pego. And I find him sneaking around in the underbrush. It doesn't take long to knock him out, and after a quick snack, he's ready to join my tribe. A red drop appears, glistening with the irresistible high loot promise. I head over and jackpot! An Ascendant pump action shotgun, and an Ascendant Yudi saddle, along with some polymer. Talk about a lucky find. The rest of the night flows into day 13, and I'm on the prowl for drops and moss chops. But after hunting down a few drops for hours, I have to admit, most of them are just random junk. I decide to go into the dunes in search of deathworms. I need their horns for a few recipes, so I put my hunting skills to the test. In the chat, they suggest me using the K mode trick, so I start scanning the horizon with it, searching for the telltale signs of the lurking deathworm. I feel like it's an eternity, but then I spot a massive undulating form breaking through the sand. My adrenaline spikes and I taunt it. Come get me, butthead! With Dundee by my side, I engage in an epic showdown with the worm. Dundee's kicks are relentless, and after a tense back and forth, the worm goes down. Victorious, I grab the deathworm horn, and true to form, I honestly completely forget that I pick it up because of my excitement. Day 14 kicks off with another hunt for drops. The first one I get has an Ascendant Anki saddle, exactly what I need for the metal shortage that I've been struggling with. However, I still have to pass tier 2 taming, because the Anki is again in tier 3. After hours of deathworm hunting, I decide I want to switch things up and look for a hyaenodon. I track down a female and I'm about to start the taming process when I notice a rock elemental lurking nearby. Not exactly ideal for my taming, so I decide I'll clear the area out first, taking out dinos that might interfere, including a very persistent Carno that thinks right now is the perfect time to walk around me. But of course, while I'm clearing things out, I accidentally kick the very hyaenodon I'm trying to tame, and she doesn't like that. Clearly, she doesn't want to be petted after that. I wait for her to calm down, but every time I get close, she spooks again. Eventually, I realize I'm probably not the stealthiest in my cloth gear, sitting on a giant kangaroo. I decide it's probably time to get off the kangaroo and get a ghillie suit. I gather the materials and craft up the ghillie, and then go back more confident than ever, trying not to scare her off. She's chilling on a rock, basking in the sun, completely unaware that I'm about to pet her. Finally, I do manage to pet her, and she relaxes a bit. Moving carefully, I get the next pet, and soon enough, I've tamed my first hyaenodon. With the female tamed, I set out to find a male. After some searching, I locate a pack and thin it to avoid taming the wrong one. But as I'm dealing with this, an Argentavis decides to snag a free meal, and the hyena pack charges me in full force. Dundee and I fend them off, and thankfully, my male survives the scuffle. Once things settle down, I approach the male, trying to stay out of sight. I get close enough for the first pet, but he remembers what I did to the rest of his pack and barks at me before darting off again. After what feels like an eternity of creeping, sneaking, stalking, and occasionally losing him, he finally calms down enough for me to finish taming him. With both hyaenodons safely tucked away in soul balls, I make my way home, content with my progress. Along the way, I find a pond teeming with fish, so I take the opportunity to gather the much-needed fish. I get too comfortable in the water and in classic kitty style, nearly drown myself. In a desert, where water is a problem. After that close call, I decide to head back and check more boxes off my taming list. Eventually, I find the male Archaeopteryx I need, but for some reason, he is playing musical trees, and this is definitely a weird tame. But I do get him, and next I want to get scorpions. Venturing out into the dunes, it doesn't take long to find a couple, and I leave the dunes with both the male and female. A drop catches my eye on the way home, but unfortunately I don't make it in time and it vanishes. As night falls, I continue gathering polymer, but I decide to tackle one more drop. As I wait for the drop, ARK throws me a curveball. A super heat wave and a frozen night at the same time. We've already discussed that ARK doesn't follow logic. To my surprise, the drop contains an Ascendant Metal Shield. This actually is really good. Armed with this shiny new shield, I set off once more, only to get completely distracted by a Procoptodon off in the distance. This is not just any Procoptodon. This is a solid black level 140 female Procoptodon. My mind is already having plans with Rue babies. She does not make it easy though. Chasing her through the dunes, I have to fend off very noisy predators that decide she looks like a potential new. After a few close calls, I manage to corner her and knock her out and officially tame her. I've got a prized level 140 solid black female Procoptodon. Feeling like a champ, I make my way back home as the first light of day 15 breaks over the desert. I'm practically grinning as I set up a cozy spot for my new Rues to have their little kangaroo family. After all the work of getting that female Rue, I'm taking 0 chances. Every baby is tucked away in a soul ball for safekeeping just in case something happens to Dundee. And what do I get? Twins. Both babies get 100% imprint, and honestly, they're giving Dundee a run for his money in the cuteness department. It was time to expand my operation, so I went into full demolition mode, smashing up greenhouse and tech structures to stock up on crystal and metal. Bulk crafting cementing paste was next on the to-do list. It's like ARK's version of extreme couponing. Then, after setting up a fancy industrial cooker in the greenhouse for easy water access, I realized it didn't need water, it needed electricity. Of course it did. Nothing in ARK is ever this simple. I moved the industrial cooker back out into the base and was stumped that it still wasn't receiving power despite me having a generator. After looking into it, I realized the range needed to be increased. So, once online, I moved to making kibble. Lots of kibble. Simple, regular, superior, all of it. I had an entire buffet of kibble lined up for my future tames. My first goal would be iguanodons. And I was shocked to learn they're extremely rare, and males may as well be extinct. Instead, I went to gather tons of metal. Upon return to the base, it was nightfall. An industrial forge took a lot of resources, but it would make metal smelting very fast. So I decided to upgrade to an industrial forge. Out with the old and in with the new. But my thirst for upgrades did not end here. With dreams of a fabricated sniper rifle, I dove into gunpowder production. Charcoal, metal, you name it. I was crafting it. After all of that, I finally got my hands on the sniper, only to realize I only had enough materials for 2 bullets. Not exactly Rambo material. So first, some gunpowder, and then, just when I thought I'd seen it all, I was forced to don fur armor to survive a freezing night. Yes, fur in the desert. ARK logic. Some rifle ammo is bulk crafted to give me an edge on the nasties. With all of the supplies crafted, I headed out to tame an elusive iguanodon. After hours of travel, I finally arrived. With a shot to the head, she comes at me. But as she hits me, my vulture on my shoulder retaliates. She barely knocks out alive because of my vulture. Her health is incredibly low, but I do end up taming her. Giving up on iguanodons, I got into a slappy fight with a giant rock, and neither of us hit very hard, so it was a very long fight. After realizing it was a waste of my time and the golem fully healed for some reason, I left the pillow fight with the rock and tried my luck at a new target, a wild horse. I quickly tamed it and picked up an ascendant pike from a supply shop nearby. With the sun at its peak, I managed to knock out and tame a high-level Morellatops. While getting the Morellatops, a heat wave slaps me in the face. I come across a female Morellatops, but due to the heat, I had to turn in. So I popped into the tent to cool off while Dundee defended my privacy. Once the heat wave was over, I picked up my tent and headed off to find water. The moment I did, a lightning storm rumbled in. I didn't know what a lightning storm did, and I stared at it bewildered. Since I can function now, I headed back to grab that really nice Morellatops. Just after she falls asleep, a saber comes out of nowhere, and because she's on almost no health, I pray she's gonna be okay, loading her up with food. She tames up, and I finally can take out the saber. When the iguanodon hunt turned up dry, I decided to tame galleys. But I missed and missed and missed. Again and again. These are the most frustrating tame attempts of my ARK life. One took a beating from a Carno and then got hit by a well-aimed trank dart from me, and I managed to get him down, finally, in the water. I tamed the male galley, and then the female also went to sleep in the water. Thank God I knocked those off my list. I head up the mountain and almost run right into a rock golem. I steal all of its cousins, and I taunt it. Yep, look at that. I'm just taking all of them. Because you're a terrible guardian of the mountain. Not far away, I see a horse being chased. I save it and then tame it up. Another species off the list. My wandering puts me back in the desert at a water vein. To complete this tier, I need bees, a male iguanodon, and both of the raptors. With frustration building, I turn back to the base. On the way back, a female raptor sets itself up to be tamed. Upon return home, something weird happened. Okay. What are we doing now? You good, bro? Why is he stuck like that? That was really weird. Did you see that? He was just kind of... He was just stuck. I don't know, but it terrified me a little bit. That was scary. Like, legitimately, I was scared of that. I'm like, what are you doing, bro? Why are you T-posing? I'm confused. In order to break it, I had to pick him up and put him back down. I guess maybe he needed a mental health reset. I don't even know. Metal is a huge problem, so I need to get an Anki. Sadly, I need to get raptors first. I made the mistake of taming a second female raptor, thinking I already had a male. However, I didn't notice this until later, and I actually went after the two Ankies first. After cleaning out the dinos, I started to trank the Anki and my gun broke. Being so far away from the house, I was forced to make a smithy and a forge out in the middle of no man's land in order to repair my gun. While out gathering metal to repair the gun, a nice vulture is spotted and tamed, and she replaces my lower level vulture on my shoulder because she's a high level. I return back to fix up the gun and take out the Anki, and now I can finally start getting metal. On the way home, I spot a terror bird. I need both the male and female, so I attempt to tame her. She knocks out, and backup comes in the form of two male terror birds. I knock out the 90, but these birds hit incredibly fast, and it's making it hard to attack back. I also knocked out and tamed the 125 male, but when I went to find the female, I could not find her. Even with the rising sun of day 18 peeking over the horizon, I could not find the girl I knocked out. But I did find a new one. This one was after a horse. But it wasn't the only one after the horse. A wyvern scooped in and took the meal away from the terror bird, leaving it hungry. So I go after her and knock her out, then tame her up. I left the desert and returned home. By the time I made it, my vision was starting to turn into a funhouse again, and it was time to hide out in a tent. After the heat passed, chat let me know I needed a male raptor, so I went out and got one. With that, tier 2 was finished, except for the iguanodon and the bees. I decided to not hold back the challenge by waiting for either. Upon returning home, I found a strange plant. When harvested, it gave me species Y seed. Okay then. I went to work for the rest of day 18, all the way into evening. While contemplating whether or not to extend the day cycle from 15 to 30 minutes to get more done during daylight, I'd stumbled upon a Doedicurus. He looked sleepy, so I decided to help him take a nap. A few trank darts later, our male Doedicurus was peacefully snoozing. Before long, he was tamed, and ready to join our growing family. Unfortunately, the audio for the next clip vanished into the stratosphere, so I'll summarize. I managed to secure some really incredible loot from some drops. Ascendant riot gloves, an ascendant compound bow, tech structures, honey, ascendant flak gauntlets, ascendant flak chest piece, an ascendant Lymantria saddle, and an ascendant terrorbird saddle. Yeah, I hit the jackpot. On the way back home, a Caprasuchus tried to snatch me up. Instead of becoming her lunch, she became my friend. See you later, alligator. Soon enough, we tamed a new female Capro. Moments later, we stumbled upon a couple more Caprasuchus, and I found a boyfriend for our lady Capro. However, a very aggressive female nearby kept interfering in my tame, so I took her out, and I tamed the male. Continuing our adventure, we found more amazing loot. 2 ascendant shotguns and ascendant chitin gauntlets. On the way back to locate some high-level thorny dragons, I spotted a beautiful female Doedicurus, and I couldn't resist stopping to tame her. But before long, she joined our ranks. Realizing I need more metal, I took up my trusty Anki out on a much-needed metal run. A sudden sandstorm decided to shove some sand in my, Yeah, let's not talk about where that sand ended up. Despite the harsh conditions, we managed to gather more metal than I've had the entire playthrough. Back at base, I crafted an auto grow, placed it down, and cooked up all of our meat because holy moly, I had a lot. On the agenda on day 19 was crafting a vacuum box. Once placed, it helped keep our base organized by picking up things off the ground. I started crafting bulk spark powder and tranquilizer arrows. In order to balance my levels, I drank a mind wipe tonic. With gunpowder and simple rifle ammo being crafted in moss, a sandstorm decided to hit right in the middle of my preparations. To cope with the blinding sands, I finally crafted desert goggles, which made a massive difference. We also made some bug repellent and soul balls, preparing for future taming endeavors. With our new equipment, I began bulk crafting tranq darts. Also, I remembered I have a pump action shotgun that I hadn't tested. Though I was a fan of the fabricated sniper rifle, chat was begging me to give the shotgun a try. I loaded up the shotgun ammo and headed out to test it. To my surprise, the shotgun was impressive, maybe even better than my sniper rifle. Excited about the new toy, I accidentally crafted the wrong bullets, but thankfully repurposed them into more tranq darts. Venturing out to gather crystal, I was ambushed by a pack of saber-toothed tigers. Among them was a stunning red level 150 male. I managed to eliminate all the others, kiting away this amazing kitty to a safe area to tame him. A bola a day keeps the sabers at bay. After a brief catnap, he was successfully tamed, and I named him Diego from Ice Age. With Diego by our side, we started collecting more materials with the Anki. However, a rock elemental was not very happy about us taking resources from his mountain, and unlike his brother from before, this guardian was relentless. However, he was stuck, so I decided to test out my fancy new pump shotgun, and Dundee, our mount, tried to help but kept getting knocked down the hill. The rock elemental managed to chuck a boulder at me, smashing all of my gear. Realizing I really wasn't doing enough damage and this was not worth the risk, I decided to retreat. I have way too many balls. I noticed I have way too many materials cluttering my inventory. I crafted some hide pants to replace my broken ones. It's always my pants that break first. In every playthrough, I lose my pants. And curiosity got the best of me, and I wondered what would happen if I wore night goggles in broad daylight. Safe to say, we were all temporarily blinded. My poor friend, watching the stream on her TV in the dark, experienced an unexpected sunburst as I lit up her entire bedroom. After loading up Dundee with all the gathered materials, we headed home. Along the way, a Carno decided to bully us. Instead of fighting, I choose to make him my friend. Good night, Mr. Carno. Shortly after, I find his sister. She tried to run, but I caught her too. With both of them tamed, we continued our journey home. Just past the trees, we discovered a pretty kitty for Diego. It was the perfect opportunity to find him a companion. With our new saber-tooth tame, our family is growing nicely. I attempted to retrieve a supply drop, but it was heavily guarded by various creatures, including another rock elemental. After carefully kiting them away, I raced to the drop and snagged the goodies. Metal structures, finally some honey, and an ascendant Arthropleura saddle. Back at base, I found some random wild raptors have damaged some of our structures. In return, I made sure that it wouldn't cause any more trouble. A sandstorm started brewing, so I took the time to fix up my desert gear. I crafted a grinder and a refrigerated chem bench, placing both of them in the base. With the grinder, I can finally recycle all the useless structures, armor, and tools that I've been hoarding. Feeling the need for more protection after the raptor incident, I decided to add extra defense to our base. We bulk crafted ammo for all our guns, tranquilizers, and prepared for the next big taming mission. Heading out to find a thorny dragon, I struggled repeatedly to get onto a stubborn platform. Amidst the chaos, I spotted a pair of Kentrosaurus, and I decided to tame both of them since they were a rare sight on this map. With both tamed, I set my sights on a main prize, the 150 thorny dragon. Thorny dragons were really good at harvesting wood, and that was something I really needed at this point. The mountain was covered with vicious dinos trying to prevent me from reaching the thorny dragon. After a series of battles, I managed to clear the area, and just as I was about to proceed, a lightning storm began. Despite the storm, I knocked out the female thorny dragon and added her to the team. On the way to find a male thorny dragon, I came across a simple green drop. This contained desert goggles, replacing the ones I had just made because they were ascendant. A fantastic find, though slightly late. I finally located the 150 male thorny dragon, but he was heavily guarded by all kinds of stuff, and the battle to reach him was intense. Dundee's health was dropping dangerously low. I took a moment to let Dundee heal and decided to use my shotgun to clear the remaining threats. The thorny dragon was being harassed by vultures, so I tried to help him. Unfortunately, the vultures were able to take him out and he didn't survive the ordeal. Disappointed, but not undeterred, I pressed on and stumbled upon something incredible. An ascendant long neck rifle. I have been waiting for one of these since I started exploring drops. With Dundee healed up, we decided to try another thorny dragon. This time, I forgot to load the rifle with tranq darts and I nearly took him out with a regular bullet. After letting him recover by hunting other creatures, I retried with the correct ammo. The new rifle was a game changer. It delivered 1,000 torpor per shot. In just 4 shots, The 150 male dragon was peacefully sleeping. I turned my attention to a Purlovia that found me. One shot was all it took to bring it down. Nearby, I find the female as well. After a few missed shots, it was tamed. Now I was tracking down the rare Ovis. I forgot they use sweet veggie cakes, not kibble, and I had to rush home to bake a cake. However, even though I got honey earlier, it wasn't enough. And now I really needed bees. Day 22 started with a mystery. I wasn't getting any eggs. Not a single one. Frustrated, I threw out every dino from my storage to see if they were laying eggs at all. Thankfully, outside of the terminal, they laid just fine. The problem was not with the dinos, it was something deeper. I removed the mod handling the eggs and reinstalled it. Upon logging back in, now we had eggs. Finally. With that solved, bees were next. The cake required eggs and honey. The biggest issue, though, was that unfortunately, eggs were not the only thing not spawning. Bees were also not properly spawning in. However, there was a silver lining. A male iguanodon finally spawned. Now that I had eggs, I crafted regular kibble and set off to tame him. Excited, I tracked down what I thought was a male iguanodon, but my tracker lied and it said female instead of male, but I didn't double check. Confident that I had my male iguanodon, I knocked out a female without realizing my mistake. Into the soul terminal she went, none the wiser. Meanwhile, the elusive queen bee still wasn't showing up on my tracker, and it was time to problem solve. After extensive research, I figured out the code to spawn one in. My map had reset from troubleshooting earlier, but I decided to test the spawn code anyway, and the queen bee appeared, except it wasn't working properly. Maybe shooting it would help? Spoiler alert, it didn't, but hey, it had a health bar, that's something, right? With no better plan, I brought out the big guns. The bees' bodyguards were not thrilled of me destroying their hive, but Dundee and my vulture handled them while I focused on the hive. Yet, despite breaking it, no queen emerged. Frustrated, I took out my rage on a nearby Yudi. Productive? No. Cathartic? Absolutely. Finally, I spotted a queen bee that I summoned earlier. She was still glitched and aggressive, but I wasn't giving up. Without bug repellent, taming her, however, was impossible. So it was time to head home and craft some. Back at the base, I organized my inventory a little bit and stumbled across a shocking discovery. The iguanodon that I tamed was female. I literally tamed a male! I scrambled for evidence to support my memory, but there was none. Turns out I'd just been oblivious. ADHD or glitch? Let's just call it that. Bug repellent in hand, I returned to the wilds. Along the way, I stopped for a yellow drop, metal structures, and scuba leggings. Because, yeah, I was doing loads of swimming in the desert, just what I needed. At the iguanodon spawn, I finally found an actual male. This time, I triple-checked before knocking him out. Success! Iguanodons are finally crossed out. Armed with repellent and determination, I spawned in another queen bee. Her bodyguards weren't thrilled and broke my mask, so I had to repair my gear. Then I broke the hive and claimed my prize. Finally, I tamed 2 queen bees and put them into soul balls for safekeeping. It was time for the first cave, and a spider was my first goal within it, and it didn't take long to find one. Barely after entering the cave, one was located. It wasn't by itself though, as it was with another male spider, but that wasn't really a problem. I very easily took out one of the 2 and tamed the other. With him secure, we continued further in the cave. Dundee was too fat to fit through the doorway, so he was picked up and I went on foot. Scared would be an understatement. Being off my roo was anxiety-inducing. My first artifact, the Gatekeeper, was within reach, but danger lurked around every corner. Spiders, scorpions, and bugs made my progress slow, and the cliffside made it so that I couldn't use Dundee, otherwise we both would fall to our deaths. So, I stayed on foot. I did craft a parachute, but forgot all about it, and I tried taming another spider, and... Please don't fall off the edge, I need you. Okay, she's coming this way. Come on, come across the bridge. Come across the bridge. Don't fall off. Oh, you fell off, didn't you? You fell off, you dip. You dip. I mean, I'm going down there anyway, but you're a dip. As I was looking around, I got jump scared. Oh, I don't like this. Oh, I fucking hate this. Ah! Fucking told you! Ah! I knew it. You asshole. I fucking knew it. Oh, I almost did not make that. Wow, that was close. I got so scared, I jumped across to the drop. I got the drop, but it was too much to carry, and a lot of it got left behind. With a near miss to the next cliff, I continued my journey. I made my way slowly, and then something funny happened. Oh god, my fucking vulture pooped and I jumped. What the fuck, man? Yeah, Yeah, that's how scared I was. Scared shitless. By actual shit. After regaining my dignity and my composure while my chat laughed at me, I continued down the path, running into a spider only to lose it yet again. While attempting to find it, I foreshadowed my own fears. And now the freaking rebel golem is gonna scare me again. Where? 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 The under me? Can I pump action you? After channeling my inner parrot and offering a rock golem a pump action, whatever that means, get your minds out of the gutter, I finally earned the gatekeeper artifact. Now, I needed the spider I came for. It took me a bit to remove all the creatures I didn't want, but finally it was just me and the spider. I used my vulture to lure it out of the creepy pit, and once again... Woohoo! Nope. As the male spider had something to say about me luring away his girlfriend. I tried to use the vulture to clear out the bodies, but she one-shot the female I was trying to tame. Oh well. There was another female in the pit, I believe, and speaking of the pit... Oh my god! I hate this cave. To chill out a bit, I decided to name my vulture finally. Velma, after Scooby-Doo. Which, at the time, I called the Jetsons for some reason. After clearing the fat rock golem, which took forever, it was decided that the female spider was no more, and that the cave was completely clear. So, I left. I did gather many artifacts before bouncing out of there, however. On the way out, I noticed a path that I had not taken previously, and killed off a lot of scorpions. Now, it started to get dicey. There was a spider here, and I wanted her, but first, I had to take out a lot of other challenging beasts. Not shooting her was a huge task, as she was chasing me too. Finally, though, everything was cleared out, and I had to reset her aggro. So, to the cave entrance I ran. Once she reset, I doused myself in bug repellent and snuck up behind and tamed her. I finished off the cave, clearing the last golem, gathering some drops, and that was the spiders finished. I fully intended to exit the cave, but a sandstorm had different ideas, and it had brewed while I was down here exploring. So, we hunkered down and waited for it to pass. It took all the way until the next morning. Dundee and I finally left the cave on day 23, early in the morning, and now we're prepared to go into a second cave. I also still needed honey, so the queen bees were put into the terminal. I waited patiently to see if it would generate honey. After some time, it did. With honey being acquired, Ovis is now within reach. Once enough honey was created, cakes were made, and then we were off to tame sheep, or at least I was. I got distracted as usual by another cave. Tried knocking out some snails, who also takes cake, but the snails inside the cave were way too high a level. As I started to leave, a misstep left me on a cliffside, almost falling to our deletion. But thankfully, I maneuvered to jump back up. That was close. Our escape from the cave came quickly, and our previous goal was once again on the table, sheep. Only, I forgot, it's a passive tame, and upon knocking it out, I killed it instead. So, I harvested its meat and cooked it up. Well, a new one was tracked, but I didn't learn my lesson, and I knocked out the second one too. Now, I discover that I am very stupid, and I shake my head in disappointment. I cannot believe I forgot about that. Instead of waiting for it to wake up, I chopped it up and ate that one too. I returned home, filled with embarrassment. Instead of sheep, on day 24, I went after moths. Lymantrias were a pain in the butt to tame, but definitely not the worst, as we'll soon see. The first moth I find is a 150, and she was hard to get up to, but as soon as I did, she flew away from me. After a few missed bolas, I finally hit one and knocked her out. With such a high-level flyer, I'm expecting a lot, and I'm about to be highly disappointed. Right next to the female I got, I find and tap out a male. The next goal is more cave creatures. First, though, we stop to admire the beauty of these flying moths. Cyan, my favorite color. Back on track, we wanted to tame the next flyer, the Onyx. This would prove difficult. Anything and everything was attacking me, left and right. Thankfully, I was able to pull one Onyx back to tame it. So now with the female tamed, I need a male. That would prove a little bit harder because really there was only females left in this cave. After killing all of the females, I finally found a male. And it just so happened to be right in front of me. These guys are so hard to see. I lured it back and it bit me. My health starting to plummet, so I ran like a little bit. His aggro reset and he sat on top of a cliff. He was kind of difficult to get up to, but I managed it and I tamed him up. I made my way to the chamber of the artifact, and once there, a few creatures were taken out. A rock golem appeared randomly at the back of the cave, throwing a rock at one of its own before blasting off like Team Rocket. On the way out, I missed the jump to leave and fall into the water. While drowning, a bat gives me rabies, and by the time I swim back to land, I'm stacking my health with steak because, of course, I didn't bring an antidote. Why would I? You think I'm good at these games I play? No, I play them so you can laugh at me. Huh, well, I waited for the rabies to almost kill me, and after barely surviving, I ate enough meat to feed the US military. With such little health left, a floor wolf was the last thing I needed, but that's what ARK gave me. I love glitches in this game sometimes, so the floor literally became lava as I jumped around like an idiot trying to get away from the wolf identifying as a land shark. I finally remembered that in this game, you have creatures that you can ride. So I threw out Dundee to save me from the floor wolf snapping at my heels. The familiar side of my base brought a sense of relief after this chaotic encounter that day. Upon arriving, I checked to see if I had any honey. To my delight, a substantial amount had accumulated while I was out, perfect for my upcoming needs. I set about restocking all of my ammo, fully aware that I wasted a lot earlier by missing all my shots. My shotgun shells were completely depleted, so I focused on crafting a fresh batch to prepare for my future encounters. Having completed most of the current tier, I knew it was time to make superior kibble for the next one. Gathering the necessary ingredients, I began the process, feeling a mix of excitement and anticipation, as well as worry. After consulting the map for a worthwhile supply drop, I decided that Dundee is faster and more reliable than the moth I just got. My journey led me into the desert in search of more deathworms. The sands were vast and stretched out before me, heat waves shimmering in the early morning light. While traversing the dunes, I stumbled upon a massive Manticore statue, a foreboding omen of the fearsome beast I would eventually have to confront. It stood tall and menacing, casting long shadows over the desert. As the heat intensified, Dundee and I found a random supply drop near the Manticore arena, and it contained things that didn't seem to belong here, like a mosasaur saddle, considering there's no ocean. Thanks. Undeterred, we continued our search for deathworms. Late into the evening, the sun dipping just below the horizon, I was about to concede defeat when suddenly the ground trembled and boom! A deathworm erupted out of the sand, catching me off guard. The battle was intense, but with determination, I emerged victorious. However, I soon realized deathworms can't be tracked by the usual methods, which posed a significant challenge given their rarity. Feeling thwarted by my failed plans, I dismounted Dundee and prepared to head home. Just then, another deathworm ambushed me, this time catching me completely off guard. Before I could react, it sent me home, reflecting on my choices. Back at base, I contemplated crafting a broth of enlightenment. I had a horn now, but I hesitated. I couldn't decide whether to tame a mantis or an arthropleura. Both required the rare deathworm horns, and as I'd experienced, the horns were hard to come by unless the worm found you first. Still wrestling with indecision, I returned to the desert to hunt more deathworms, a task that proved time-consuming and arduous. After what felt like an eternity, I managed to collect enough and headed back home. I crafted the remaining broth and gathered the rest of my horns. Preparing for the next day's endeavors, noting that only one ovis had spawned, I decided to just sign off for the night, storing the broth and horns away safely. The next time I logged in, I gathered my supplies, resolved that today was the day. I needed to make sweet veggie cakes for taming snails, so I set about crafting those as well. I loaded all the taming materials onto Dundee for safekeeping, and to benefit from his extended spoil timer. I also made him gather berries to prevent him from devouring my precious kibble. With stimulants crafted to complete the veggie cakes, I was ready. And on the morning of day 26, I cooked up a couple of cakes, and excited, we headed out to tame some ovis. I realized Dundee couldn't navigate the steep mountain paths where the ovis usually were. Finally, a practical use for the Lymantria presented itself. Even though it was slow, she could reach places Dundee couldn't. Oddly enough, I spotted a sheep wandering in the dunes. A rare and fortunate find. The area was surprisingly safe, and I approached the ovis carefully. I offered her a sweet veggie cake, and she accepted eagerly. And just like that, she was tamed. I decided to continue flying on the Lymantria, appreciating the safety she provided despite her sluggish pace. I soared over the landscape, catching a sight of the wyvern scar, the treacherous pit where wyverns nested. Temptation tugged at me to dive in and snatch an egg, but reason prevailed. Today was not such a day for perilous ventures. After allowing the moth to regain her stamina, I resumed my search for a male sheep. Hours passed as I scoured the terrain, growing impatient with the moth's slow speed. Eventually, I swapped back to Dundee, hoping his swiftness would expedite my search. The quest for a male ovis had stretched into the night. Despite my efforts, the elusive creature remained unfound. Realizing I was wasting my valuable time, I decided to shift focus to taming snails and centipedes. I prepared to venture into the cool depths of the cave, a welcome respite from the scorching sun. Knowing that broth spoils rapidly, and having only 2, I left it on Dundee to preserve until I needed it. Delving deep into the cave in search of a centipede, I was presently surprised to encounter something even more rare, a megaloceros. The elusive creature caught my eye, and I carefully drew her attention. With a few well-placed tranquilizer shots, she succumbed to a deep sleep. I approached her cautiously and tamed her. I needed to transport the broth, but I wanted to avoid unnecessary aggression. I decided to put Dundee away and summoned my bat companion to carry the broth. This strategy proved effective, as the bat could stay much closer to me without provoking attacks. As I continued exploring for another megaloceros, I stumbled upon a mantis. Fortuitously, I had deathworm horns ready from my earlier hunts. Applying bug repellent, I approached stealthily and successfully tamed a male mantis. Further into the cave, I finally located the female mantis I needed. After clearing out the hostile creatures in the vicinity, I tamed her as well. Reaching the artifact chamber, I noticed the absence of any Arthropleura. Deciding to make the most of my journey, I retrieved the artifact of the crag. However, as I did, a sleeping rubble golem awakened, and a high-level direwolf sensed my presence. In a matter of moments, the wolf had me at half health. Panic surged through me, but a quick, decisive shotgun blast to its face neutralized the immediate threat. Still, my wounds were severe, and I fled to create distance between me and the golem. Using the terrain to my advantage, I engaged the rubble golem. I dodged its boulder throws, narrowly avoiding serious harm. My bat companion wasn't as lucky, taking a direct hit. With my health dwindling and every move critical, I continued to fight. Weaving between attacks like a seasoned fighter, finally landed the decisive shot. The golem crumbled, and I stood there breathless, and amazed that I'd survived with so little health remaining. After that harrowing experience, I decided it might be safer and easier to just go back to the desert. Exiting the cave, I returned to the sandy expanse to seek out my Arthropleuras. I finally spotted them, crawling around in the dunes, and it made sense. Centipedes in the desert. That should have occurred to me before. To prepare, I cleared out nearby threats, inadvertently drawing the centipede's attention. It slithered at me, and I sprinted away, mindful these creatures could destroy my armor. Armor that I needed intact for this exact taming process. Once it lost interest, I equipped the broth, aware that time was against me, as my broth was close to spoiling. Approaching carefully, I struggled to find the prompt to feed it. Panic set in as precious seconds ticked away. Desperately, I circled the creature until finally I was near its head and the option appeared. I fed it swiftly, and the male Arthropleura was tamed. I realized, belatedly, that the second broth had taken on the spoil timer of the first and was about to expire. With no time to lose, I threw it into Dundee, hoping to preserve it just a bit longer. Continuing my search, I soon spotted a female Arthropleura nearby. Racing against time once more, I retrieved the broth and hurried to her side. This time, the process went a lot smoother, and she tamed without incident. Just as I secured her, the ground started to shake and a deathworm came at me. It became a frantic race back to Dundee. I reached him just in time, leaping onto his back as the worm surfaced. With a mix of irritation and determination, I decided to teach the creature a lesson for its rudeness, dispatching it swiftly. I swapped Dundee out for the Lymantria, taking to the skies once more. My next plan was to tame a Tapejara. Little did I know, this endeavor would test my patience and my sanity, and perhaps that of my editor as well. The Tapejara was a skittish creature, rarely landing and quick to flee. After spending several in-game hours waiting for it to land, I realized I just needed a new strategy. The first idea was to exhaust the Tapejara, forcing it to land because of stamina. Understanding this approach was ineffective, I formulated a new plan involving the Argentavis, stronger, more capable flyers. I swapped back to Dundee to clear out any threats that might interfere with taming an RG. During this process, a rock golem emerged, a formidable foe with an absurd amount of health. After an exhausting battle involving at least 200 bullets, the golem finally fell, yielding valuable resources like obsidian, crystal, oil, and metal. With the area secured, I began the challenging task of taming a high-level, untrapped Argentavis. Despite missing a few shots, I succeeded in tranquilizing the female Argy and taming her. Still in the vicinity, I decided to tame a male Argy as well. After just 2 shots, he succumbed, and I added him to my growing collection. Now, equipped with RGs, I was ready to tackle the Tapejara once more, but true to form, I became sidetracked when a direwolf took a nip at me. With a single tranquilizer dart, she was downed and tamed, though she greedily consumed much of my remaining superior kibble. Returning home to resupply, I crafted an additional 30, hoping it would suffice for the challenges ahead. As I prepared to leave, an ominous storm rolled in. Uncertain of its nature, I took refuge in my tent. The sky darkened unnaturally, and flashes of light streaked across the horizon. At the urging of my chat, I ventured out briefly, witnessing this eerie spectacle. The wind whipped around me and the water's surface churned violently. Though I was assured this storm only affected technology like my generator, but a sudden loud noise had me scurrying back into my tent. I waited for the storm to go away, and with the skies clear, I set out to gather more resources. I took my thorny dragon out to collect wood, essential for producing charcoal, which I needed for more tranquilizer darts, and with plenty of that gathered, the dragon was safely stored away, and I focused on crafting additional ammo. While waiting for charcoal to process, I attempted once more to find a male ovis. Unfortunately, I arrived too late. A raptor was already feasting on the carcass. Accepting defeat in this endeavor, I redirected my attention to taming a Deodon, creatures that I would need for future boss battles. I found a pair engaged in combat with ankylosaurus. Assisting in dispatching the Yankees, I began the taming process. The female fell first, succumbing after only a few trank darts. Soon after, I spotted a superior 145 level female Deodon, a prime candidate for breeding strong offspring. As I initiated taming, a rock elemental interrupted me, hurling a boulder to the back of my head. Prioritizing safety, I lured it away before resuming. With the high-level female secured, I sought out a male Deodon to complete my pair. Along the way, I was momentarily distracted by a Paraceratherium, and it seemed to challenge me with just a mere glance. Unable to resist, I tamed both the male and female. Descending into the valley, I found another 145, but this one was male. Before I could act, however, a series of interruptions ensued. A saber-toothed cat, more pigs, a terror bird. What is this, a party? Get out of here. I utilized my most potent weaponry to clear out all the aggressors. Finally, with a clear shot, I tranquilized the male Deodon, landing a decisive dart as he attempted to flee. With the male tamed, I considered my next move. Proximity to one of the caves prompted me to seek out a male Megalosaurus. After dispatching some thorny dragons guarding the entrance, I ventured inside. Surprisingly, a Megalosaurus surfaced from the water. I had to guide him to shore because he was lost. I engaged in a brief but intense confrontation with some other creatures. Despite taking damage from several threats, he remained aggressive towards me. Ultimately, though, he succumbed to sleep after a well-placed tranquilizer, and I tamed him. With my objective met, I headed back home, recognizing I needed aerial mobility. I crafted the saddle for my RG and took to the skies. My next goal was to acquire a Megatherium, essential for combating the spider boss that I believe awaited me, which we find out later it does not. I located and tranquilized the male Megatherium and added him to my collection. Not long after, I encountered a female direwolf. A single dart sent her fleeing and she collapsed mere feet away. Continuing my search, I found a male direwolf and subdued him as well. A dense fog rolled in, obscuring my vision, followed by another storm. Amid these challenges, I located a female Megatherium, but she was in an enraged state due to a bug buff. Attempts to take her down was met with hostility, and I feared I might accidentally kill her, so I opted to eliminate the threat and just move on. Soon after, I found another pair of Megatheriums. Targeting the female, I managed to tranquilize her despite interference from the protective male. She tamed immediately though, must have had resources in her inventory. Recognizing the need for a swift flyer again to obtain dragon eggs, I decided I was going to tame a taped Jera. I employed a new tactic involving a parachute and a grappling hook to latch onto my RG for better positioning. What followed was the most mentally taxing taming experience I've ever had. The taped Jera was exceedingly fast, and my attempts to whistle commands to my mount were clumsy at best. Multiple times I chased it all the way across the dunes, only to lose ground. Desperate, I resorted to using rare flowers to provoke it into attacking me, but with only one rare flower initially, my attempt failed. I gathered more, tried it again, this time by using my Lymantria, and despite my efforts, the taped Jera remained extremely elusive. I grappled to my bird repeatedly, only to be flung about wildly, obstructed by my own parachute or accidentally releasing my grip. The sun set and rose again as I persisted, frustration mounting. Finally, after countless attempts and near-death experiences, I landed the necessary tranquilizer shots. The taped Jera plummeted to the ground, and I rushed to secure it. After nearly 2 real-life hours, I successfully tamed the taped Jera. Exhausted, I took a moment to recover, contemplating whether an adult beverage might be in order. Though I don't drink, the thought was tempting. Upon returning, I find myself under attack by a Pegomastax nibbling at my ankles. I dispatched it quickly, and then took out the tape Jera to admire it, venting some of my residual frustration with a playful punch to its face. Determined to never repeat that ordeal, I sought a low-level female. This time, the process was mercifully quick. A little too mercifully, because when I got down there, I realized she was dead. Accepting this loss, I returned home to craft a saddle for the male tape Jera. Now it was time to get a female tape Jera. I tracked one down in the desert, and she had already had torpor on her from a scorpion, which helped me one-tap and tame her. Thank God that's over. I couldn't resist taking the male out once more. This time, I discovered he has a unique ability. He can fly in all directions, including backwards. It was an exhilarating experience, and I spent some time maneuvering through the skies, enjoying his newfound agility. For a bit of fun, I decided to attach to a cliffside one last time, marveling at the versatility of my Tipjera. As I hung there, I realized it's about time to add a pin to mark my home on the map. It only took me 28 days to think of, but better late than never. After putting the Tipjera away, I swapped over to Dundee, ready for my next adventure. My goal was to tame a Thylacoleo. Venturing into their territory, I soon found a formidable male. Allowing him to attack Dundee, I let him exhaust himself. Once he began to tire, I used tranquilizers to bring him down. Before long, he collapsed, and successfully, I had tamed a male Thylacoleo. Just as I was preparing to find another one, a storm rolled in, thwarting my plan. Visibility plummeted, making it nearly impossible to continue safely. Adapting to the situation, I decided to head towards a location where the Phoenix was rumored to appear. Making a pit stop at home, I gathered the materials required for this endeavor. Without power, I couldn't craft the chambers needed for the flamethrower, so I opted for fire arrows instead. It wasn't ideal, but it would have to do. With the storm affecting visibility, I crafted a saddle for the Thylacoleo, and I equipped him for a test run. Taking him out, I discovered his unique skill to climb mountains at a 90-degree angle. We scaled the highest peak, playing a figurative game of King of the Hill against no one before descending. Eager to test his combat, I headed to the desert to fight deathworms. Unfortunately, none of them spawned, so I settled for taking on smaller creatures, bullying all the small fry, as it were. Then I made my way to the Phoenix spawn location, but it was nowhere to be found. Further research revealed that it only appears during a superheat event. Determined, I returned to the desert as a heatwave began, knowing it would eventually escalate into a superheat. As I waited, anticipation grew. Finally, a superheat started and the Phoenix emerged in a burst of fire, shooting straight into the sky. It quickly soared out of reach. Another frustrating tame seemingly designed for multiplayer, not me. I tried aiming at it from the ground, but the height it flew to made it nearly impossible. Remembering my hard-earned Tipjera, I brought him out to join the chase. Because, you know, if this worked so well last time, let's use it again. Reluctantly, I prepared for yet another montage of annoyance. Mid-flight, I accidentally pressed the wrong button, releasing the grapple on my Tipjera, and plummeted towards the ground helpless. As I fell, pigs spotted me from below and thought I was food, and I thought I was a goner. Miraculously, I survived the fall, but find myself in a precarious situation. The pigs closed in, and ARK's frustrating knockback mechanics made it nearly impossible to try and get back onto the Tipjera who tried to rescue me. Finally, I managed to remount him and take to the skies once more. Despite my efforts, I could not find the Phoenix, and before I knew it, the superheat ended. Realizing I'd lost my chance for now, I decided to give up on the pursuit temporarily. Heading back to the spawn point, I noticed something strange. The Phoenix was stuck in the ground, even though it really wasn't actually there. Anyways, just as I returned home, another superheat began. Figures. Realizing it might be faster to craft a flamethrower, I decided to do that. So I built a chemistry bench, which I placed conveniently next to my beehive. First on the agenda was crafting propellant. Unfortunately, propellant requires sulfur, a resource that's kinda limited. Additionally, I was missing oil. This complicated matters even further. I spent the rest of the day trying to place oil pumps and gather oil and made no progress. Frustrated, I concluded that taming a wyvern is the best path forward. Back home, I crafted as many extraordinary kibble as I could, ending up with only 7. I tried producing more propellant, but all I managed was a single unit, hardly worth the effort. Setting out to obtain a wyvern, I was briefly distracted by a supply drop. After checking its contents and finding nothing of immediate use, I refocused on my goal. Consulting my taming chart, I realized I also need to tame a rock elemental, and I got distracted as usual. Knowing I'd need significant firepower, I prepared to craft a rocket launcher and ample ammunition. I had a rocket launcher in my inventory, but soon I discovered this is not compatible with my mod. After a lot of struggling and using a considerable amount of gunpowder, I finally crafted a weapon that worked. This process was also ear-splittingly loud. I turned the volume down for you guys. I had to hear it at full volume with headphones on. You're welcome. With the cannonballs crafted into bazooka-compatible ammunition, I was ready to proceed. However, after firing the first few shots, I found myself severely lacking in metal. Time for a metal run. Rather than mining metal like a normal person, I decided I would just get it from a rock elemental. I gathered the best tames, the creatures that had taken me ages to acquire for this fight. Despite their strength, they did almost no damage. But I was freaking determined. The battle was long and arduous, but eventually we wore it down. And I learned that my Anki could harvest the fallen golem, allowing me to collect a substantial amount of metal and resources. Heading back home, I appreciated the efficiency of my base's auto-sorting and auto-smelting systems. The moment I entered, resources were pulled and processing began. I set out again with the cannonballs. I had to test their effectiveness. I found a rock golem standing there, just looking at me. Testing the bazooka cannonballs, I noticed they did a lot of damage, but no torpor. And maybe, I guess, I didn't have the right ammo? Using the ammo I had, I took down this elemental because I needed more metal anyway. From this golem, we got a lot of stuff. With a few bazooka cannonballs left, I located another rock elemental. This time, when I hit it, it actually induced torpor. After 4 shots, the level 10 rock elemental collapsed. Since it was knocked out, I decided to tame it. I successfully added a rock elemental to my ranks. Encouraged, I set out to tame an even higher level one with only 12 remaining cannonballs. However, this proved to be a very big mistake. A few shots in, my bazooka broke, and I didn't have the resources to continue. So I returned back. Back at base, I smelted more metal and made additional cannonballs, as well as repairing my weapon. I spent far too much time mistakenly thinking I had more metal than I did, repeatedly moving resources between my regular furnace and my industrial furnace. After multiple times, I finally realized my error. Accepting I needed more metal, I took out the Anki for a metal run. I gathered as much as I could, finishing up around 11 a.m. While crafting more ammo, a sandstorm hit, reducing visibility to 0. I couldn't see a darn thing. I hid in my tent until the storm passed, and once it was over, I had 63 cannonballs to use. Hopefully, this was enough to knock out a high-level rock elemental. Returning to the elemental I'd tried earlier, I was pleased to find that its torpor had stayed the same. I wouldn't need as many shots as I thought. After 9 blasts, the level 135 elemental went down. I unfortunately forgot to bring the sulfur with me, so I tried rocks, and that wasn't effective. So I went back to grab sulfur, and I didn't have any sulfur left, so I got clay. Returning to the down elemental, I placed the clay in, and it still wasn't very effective, but it would have to do. Eventually, the rock elemental accepted the clay, and I successfully tamed it. Feeling accomplished, I added the high-level rock elemental to my collection. Having exhausted a significant amount of materials on the golem, I realized I needed to replenish my metal supplies to wrap up day 29. Mounting my trusty Thyla, I ventured out with the intent to gather as much metal as possible. Along the way, I encountered more golems. This opportunity was too good to pass up. Determined to harvest them for their valuable resources, I decided to engage them. To even the odds, I summoned my own rock golem to join the fray. What unfolded was an epic slappy fight between 2 rocks, a spectacle that would make even the bravest warriors pause and chuckle. With both my rock golem and my Thyla fighting alongside me, we eventually brought down the enemy golem. After the dust settled, I deployed my Anki to harvest the fallen giant. However, I soon discovered that harvesting these with an Anki wasn't as fruitful as I had hoped. The tameable version of the rock golem does not yield very much in resources. Curious about the best method to gather metal, I experimented using the Anki on regular rocks, and they didn't provide very much either. Deciding to change tactics, I set my sights on the mountain's rich metal nodes. Guiding the Anki up the steep slopes, I began mining the gleaming veins of metal. The effort proved worthwhile. Mining metal nodes with the Anki was significantly more efficient. As I contemplated setting up a forge smelting base at the new location, I placed on an AA bench to consider my options. The forge, however, was quite expensive, and I decided against building it. Metal nodes seemed to be the optimal choice for gathering resources at this point. I spent a long time gathering resources, discovering that larger metal nodes offered even greater yield. I loaded up Dundee with all the metal collected on the Anki, and I realized that my Thyla really couldn't carry even a single stack due to the weight. Dundee, however, was very reliable, and he was a champ at handling the load. Unfortunately, he couldn't carry me and the metal simultaneously. It was clear I needed to discover a new plan. Remembering that Argent's half the weight of any metal in their inventory, I decided to put one out for transport. With the RG's assistance, inventory management became a little bit better, though it took a while to sort everything out. Embracing this newfound efficiency, I reconsidered setting up a metal smelting base after all. Consulting the forge crafting recipe, I gathered the necessary resources to build a forge. Placing it strategically, I began offloading metal into it. Repeating this process, I set up multiple forges to maximize my smelting capacity. Once all the forges were operational, I tested a new method of collecting metal. To my astonishment, I discovered Ankis can automatically harvest metal nodes when being carried by an RG. This revelation changed everything. Or at least it would if ARK wasn't glitchy. It was definitely time for some serious serious metal gathering, and with the Anki in tow, sometimes I had to dismount to use it directly, as the hitboxes could be rather finicky. Nonetheless, we amassed a substantial amount of metal to smelt. Returning to the forges, I allowed them time to process the raw ore, occasionally taking breaks to let the smelting complete. I repeated this cycle until I had all the metal I needed. By the early morning of day 30, I was still diligently mining. Once I gathered enough smelted material, I flew home with the RG. Arriving back at the house around 9 o'clock, I felt a sense of accomplishment. All that metal was for one significant purpose: crafting the Titanosaur saddle, which required a ridiculous amount of resources. With the saddle in mind, I crafted more cannonballs too, this time intended for the Titanosaur. It was time to attempt to tame the colossal and notoriously difficult creature, or at least give it my best shot. On the way to the Titanosaur's last known location, I stumbled upon a supply drop containing an Ascendant Capro saddle. Maybe this is a good omen? And then there she was, the Titanosaur towering above everything else. Armed with cannonballs and aware she had 31,000 torpor, I steeled myself to see if this was even going to be sufficient. I took aim with the bazooka, my heart pounding. Just as I was about to fire, Dundee was attacked by a wolf, causing me to miss my shot. The pesky creature made me miss a second shot as well, frustration mounting with each wasted cannonball, but I persisted on my third attempt. I landed a direct hit right on the Titanosaur's massive snout. As she began to lumber towards me, I realized the danger I was in. To gauge her strength, I allowed her to strike me once. The impact was immense. She dealt significant damage, and it became clear that Dundee was not the ideal mount for this endeavor. Recognizing my peril, I decided to retreat. Sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. Back at home, I sat down to formulate a new plan. It was midday on day 30, and I needed a better strategy to tame the Titanosaur. Thankfully, I still have a long time left. Breeding a couple of extra tape jarras seemed like a logical next step. To facilitate this, I crafted an air conditioner to ensure that the eggs would not succumb or get cold. Enabling the tape jarras mating, I was soon inundated with eggs. Oh my goodness, that is a lot of eggs. Before I knew it, babies were hatching out everywhere. The egg hatch speed was set way too high, and my settings were very quick. I scrambled to claim all of the babies as they grew up. Suddenly, I found myself with an unintended army of tape jarras. My aptly named tape jarra, Arse, was definitely not prepared for fatherhood and seemed to be contemplating his life choices. He had so many kids he ran away from home. Hello, sir? Oh, that's Arse. Arse, why are you being an arse? Get over here. Arse! Arse is deciding to be an arse. I mean, he's working with his name, I suppose. Arse, what are you doing? Did you run away from your children? You don't want to pay child support, bro? Deadbeat dad, how dare you? Frickin' jerk. He's like, nah, man. That woman just popped out like 22 kids. I'm leaving. I'm not being responsible for that. He pieced out. Bro signed up for Mari real quick. He's like, I want to take a DNA test. These aren't mine. After the chaotic breeding session and perhaps traumatizing my poor tape jarra, I decided to put him to work and took him to the Wyvern scar. Standing at the edge of the scar, I contemplated how to acquire a wyvern egg. Before diving into this perilous endeavor, I gathered supplies to craft beds, just in case things went south, which, inevitably, they will. One of them was flying around aimlessly, refusing to engage me. Realizing I had accidentally left my shotgun at home, I attempted to take down the wyvern with a sniper rifle. After 5 shots, it had only lost 400 health. This was not enough. Switching tactics, I relied on the Thyla to deal more substantial damage. The battle was intense. The wyvern inflicted significant harm, but ultimately the Thyla emerged victorious. As a reward, we collected a lightning talon from the fallen dragon. Feeling a mix of adrenaline and caution, I decided to put the Thyla away and proceed on foot. Before descending into the trench, I removed all of my clothes because I didn't want them dying. Knowing the risks ahead, I placed the beds I had crafted earlier. As I began my descent towards the trench, a level 145 Carno charged it. She managed to land a few hits before I defeated her, leaving me quite injured but undeterred. Nearing the trench, the sight of numerous deadly creatures made my heart race. To clear the area, I summoned the Thyla once more. Annoyingly, a rock elemental revealed itself, adding to my challenge. Fortunately, he was only level 10 and was easily dispatched. With the immediate threats eliminated, I put the Thyla away again and took a running leap off the cliff. I used a parachute to glide gracefully into the fiery abyss below. As I descended into the pit of hellfire, I scanned around for wyvern nests and saw none. Suddenly, a fire wyvern spotted me. In an instant, flames engulfed me and I became a human torch, lasting merely 5 seconds before respawning at the bed I'd wisely placed earlier. After the abrupt demise, I reconsidered my approach. Going in alone wasn't the best idea. However, the tape jarra was encumbered, so I crafted a chest to store all of my belongings. Unburdened, we tried our luck together again. Still not seeing any nests, I slowed down to look more thoroughly, and a poison wyvern seized the opportunity to attack. But thanks to the tape jarra's impressive flying skills, we narrowly escaped. Attempting to regain stamina on top of a mountain, we were interrupted by a lightning wyvern, forcing us to relocate. Fine, have your mountain, I don't care. Once rejuvenated, we delved into the trench, gathering a cluster of wyverns. I attempted to lure them away, but they lost interest quickly. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I spotted my first nest. It was heavily guarded, so I had to draw the wyverns away again before making a move, successfully leading them off this time. I landed stealthily beside a nest, and inside was a level 90 fire wyvern egg. Not the highest level, but still a decent find. Grabbing the egg, I swiftly retreated as the entire trench erupted in fury, wyverns chasing after me. With skillful maneuvering, however, I outpaced them and celebrated my successful heist. Encouraged, I decided to go back in, and quickly found another unguarded nest, this time holding a level 100 poison wyvern. The wyverns were even more annoyed by this theft. But again, I managed to escape the wrath. Knowing I needed wyvern milk for the hatchlings, I summoned Dundee to knock out a female wyvern. Amid the chaos, another rock elemental emerged, adding to my growing irritation of these stupid boulders. Ignoring it, I focused on knocking out the wyvern. With a well-placed shot, she fell unconscious. However, she had a companion that was not pleased and pursued me aggressively. In my haste to retrieve the milk, the fire wyvern burned me to my untimely death. Respawning, I quickly remounted my Typechera to recover Dundee and the precious milk. Fortunately, the aggressive wyvern had lost interest, and I was able to retrieve the milk from the unconscious wyvern. Deciding to eliminate any potential threats, I put the low-level wyvern out of her misery. Emboldened by my previous success, I attempted yet another egg heist, securing a level 60 poison wyvern egg. Fewer wyverns pursued me this time, but I pushed my luck by checking another nest in their presence, provoking them even further, and I retreated to regroup. While checking the levels of nearby wyverns, my wyvern milk spoiled. A setback, but I was determined to find higher level eggs. I ventured back in, but the wyverns were no longer tolerating me. After a tense chase, I managed to lose them and decided to call it a night. Recognizing the desert nights were too cold to hatch the eggs, I headed home. I placed the eggs in my incubator and prepared to hatch the first one. But something attacked my wall. While investigating, I found a creature that brazenly leaped over my spike fence to assault me. Dealing with the intruder, I returned to the task at hand. Realizing I hadn't activated the air conditioners essential for maintaining the perfect temperature, I turned them on. With conditions optimal, I tossed out the egg, and out popped a little poison wyvern. Taming her, I noted that without the wyvern milk, she actually didn't starve due to my settings. So that was okay, but she also would not receive imprint either. It was too fast. Now that I had a female, I considered hatching the second poison egg to get a male. As it cracked open, a male emerged, eager for a walk. Unfortunately, his size made it very difficult to imprint him before he matured. Once grown, I took him out for a test flight. His poison breath was incredibly powerful, though it didn't induce torpor as I'd hoped. Nonetheless, flying with him was enjoyable. Next, I hatched the fire wyvern egg. A male emerged, also wanting a walk. This time, I successfully imprinted him with 100% efficiency. Riding the fire wyvern was exhilarating, and I realized that taming the phoenix would now be much easier. So, back to the desert. I tracked the phoenix and made a quick stop for water. En route, I discovered an Ascendant Rex saddle in a supply drop, but I stayed focused on my mission. Testing the wyvern's capabilities, I cleared the area of threats while waiting for the superheat event. When the superheat began, the phoenix appeared, agile and elusive. With the fire wyvern's breath, I managed to land hits, beginning the taming process. After circling and strategically positioning myself, the phoenix was tamed. Spotting a second one nearby, I hurried to tame it before the superheat ended. Despite some challenges, I succeeded. With 2 phoenixes tamed, I contemplated my next goal. High-level Rexes were required to beat the boss. I performed a dino wipe to reset the spawns because the highest level was level 20. Soon, a level 145 male appeared. Gathering extra extraordinary kibble from home, I tracked and tamed him, taking advantage of his distraction with other creatures. With the lack of high-level females, however, I initiated a Rex genocide to encourage new spawns. I flew around on an RG, collected drops, and killed all the Rexes that I found. After several eliminations, I finally found a high-level female. During the taming process, a group of predators threatened her safety, but I managed to protect and tame her. Continuing my effort, I stumbled upon a Tech Rex and could not resist adding him to my collection, despite a mishap where my Thyla accidentally struck him. By late night of day 31, I had spent most of the day hunting Rexes. I found another high-level female and successfully tamed her. After yet another dino wipe, another 145 male Rex spawned, and I tamed him as well. Several more dino wipes later, I find another 145 male. Countless wipes later, I find another high-level female, and I decide at this point to go ahead and call it quits and go back home. 3 hours in, and numerous dino wipes later, I had all of the Rexes that I needed, and it seemed my efforts were rewarded in abundance. The journey home was filled with a sense of accomplishment. Back at base, it was time to sort through my impressive roster of powerful creatures and random stuff. Now came the intricate task of breeding and trying to get mutations. Selecting 2 of my best Rexes, I began the process, and I bred for several days. I was determined to build an unmatched army of Rexes, and the effort was immense, but I knew every moment invested would pay off in dividends in the challenges ahead. After an exhausting journey to get the perfect Rex mutations, finally I reached 24 out of 20. I started organizing the non-mutated Rexes to prepare for a new challenge, taming Troodons. With the breeding complete, the unmutated Rexes were safely tucked into my inventory, ready for future sacrifices in the Troodon taming quest. But first, I need to gear up for the boss fight. The desert cloth armor wasn't going to collect itself, so I went off for the hunt for the right resources and drops. The day kicked off with resource gathering and drop hunting. My inventory slowly filling up with everything I need to tackle tougher challenges ahead. As the day turned into night, I found myself standing at the scene of the entrance of the cave. This was it, the last cave I needed to explore. Entering the cave, I scanned the area for megalanias, but my exploration was rudely interrupted by a rock golem. With some effort, I took it down, only to be ambushed a few feet away by its brother. He didn't last long though either. Spotting a drop across a perilous gap, I tried grappling up to it but ended up dangling directly in front of an enemy. After clearing the danger, I carefully rappelled down and snagged my prize. An ascendant metal pickaxe, a sword, and some blueprints for desert gear. A mantis tried to pull a sneak attack on me but was swiftly dealt with. I continued towards another drop. Unfortunately, this one wasn't worth the trouble, and while dodging Arthos and their obnoxious acid spit, my pants decided to give up on me. Again. Pushing forward, I reached a crossroads and chose the wrong tunnel, which led me into a circle. The next section required crossing dangerous gaps. I put Dundee away to avoid accidental falls. After nearly walking off the edge myself, I pulled out my trusty grapple gun. The jumps were nerve-wracking, but I managed to clear each one, taking out enemies that are waiting on the other side. One mantis didn't even wait for me to show up, it just jumped to its death on its own. Thanks for making my life easier, buddy. After securing a third drop that was just as underwhelming as the second, I brought Dundee back out to handle the swarm of mobs ahead. Clearing the path, I spotted another drop guarded by Arthos. As I was dealing with them, another Robo Golem tried to ruin my day, but it didn't work. With the artifact in hand and a couple more drops collected, I began my trek out of the cave, only to realize I'd forgotten water. Parched and battered, I barely survived a rock golem attack on my way out. Every step was a struggle. Thirst was draining my health. I was close to making it, until I wasn't. I'm dead. Revived and still salty, I repaired my gear, including my perpetually breaking pants. Running low on silk, I gathered more of it to fix my desert cloth, and then returned to the caves. I found another Megalania, and he was on the roof of the cave. I promptly knocked him down and knocked him out, then tamed him and safely tucked him away. Clearing out trash mobs along the way deeper in the cave, I found my next prize, a female Megalania. After a quick scuffle that left the male Megalania lifeless at her side, I knocked her out and tamed her. With her secured, I finally turned my attention back to Troodons. Tracking down a pack of them, I prepared for the dangerous process of taming. Sacrificing a Rex was the plan, so I had one set on passive and let the Troodons have at it. As the Rex's health dwindled, with my help, I switched back to attack mode just before it fell. The Troodon took the bait and successfully tamed. While trying to pick up my new Troodon, I accidentally grabbed the dead Rex and fell to the ground. The Troodons attacked me, angering my Tape Jera, which caused it to retaliate against them. It was absolute chaos. After repositioning and regrouping, I set up for another Troodon tame. The second attempt went much smoother. With another Rex sacrificed, I successfully tamed my second Troodon. Despite the chaotic process, I was finally making progress on my goals. After successfully taming that Troodon, I scooped it up and set my sights on the next target, the Thylacoleo. The best one I could find on the map is a 130, so naturally that was the prize. Tracking it down didn't take long, and after a quick knockout, it was mine. With the Thyla tamed and secured, it was time to move on to finding a good Yutyrannus. After a lot of waiting and scanning, I finally spotted a 140 female. I knocked her out, but as I was putting food in her inventory, a scorpion decided it was the perfect time for a jump scare. Thankfully, Dundee had my back and finished the scorpion off before it could kill me. With that chaos behind me, that Yuta was successfully tamed. Still on the lookout for a suitable male Yuta, I scoured the area and eventually came across a distracted level 140. Of course, distracted doesn't mean he doesn't come alone. He came with a group of friends. I was trapped up against a rock and had to fight my way free before running off without taking too much damage. As the Yuta started to torpor run, a group of pigs showed up to ruin my progress. In the middle of a heat wave, I was burning alive in my flak armor, already feeling the onset of heat stroke. After taking out the pigs, I refocused on the Yuta and finally got to sleep. With the male tamed, I was ready to head back home, but not before another pig decided to ambush me. I threw out my Thyla and turned the pig into bacon. Flying back on my Tape Jera, the heat wave pushed me to my limits. My vision warped into a funhouse circus as the heat stroke hit its peak. Swapping Swapping to cooler armor barely helped as I scanned the area for a titanosaur. Thankfully, the heat wave subsided and my vision returned to normal. Back at base, I crafted Yuta saddles and started breeding the pair. Soon, the first egg hatched, giving me a female Yuta. After imprinting on her with some cuddles, I continued the breeding frenzy. Tons of eggs, lots of babies, this process was in full swing. With the Uta's breeding, I shifted focus to Daedons. The pig butts, as I started calling them, were everywhere, sticking out of the side of my hill as breeding continued. By 7 a.m., I had so many pigs I was starting to lose count. By later that night, I needed a break from breeding, so I gathered metal because I needed an absurd amount of saddles. Mining into the night, I collected materials for cannonballs also. The Titanosaur was the final tame on my list, and it was time to prepare for this ultimate challenge. Finally, I find a Titanosaur. This massive beast was the final test of my patience. I threw down my Rex, saddled it up, and tried hitting the Titan from back of my dino. After the first few attempts were rough, the Titan kept turning as I lined up a shot, and it made every hit miss. And it was really hard to stay calm. Testing the Rex damage didn't do much to my mood. The Titan's massive health pool made it laugh off my attacks. Still, I managed a few hits, but the torpor was dropping so fast that it felt impossible. Between glitches and my poor aim, this tame was quickly becoming one of the most frustrating things I'd ever attempted. After an hour of effort and barely reaching 2.4k out of 30,000, I needed a new strategy. Swapping to Dundee gave me more accuracy with my shots, but the Titan's insane durability meant it wasn't enough. Frustration boiled over and I started attacking the Titan outright just to kill it, but it had 230k health and made it feel pointless. Finally, I had an idea. I'll use the Rex to keep the Titan distracted. With the Titan focused on the Rex, I had an opening to land more precise shots. The rain added to the challenge, making my vision a little bit blurry, but I was determined. This was my last big tame, and I wasn't going to let it beat me. With the Rex keeping the Titanosaur distracted, I finally had clear shots at its head. The torpor started climbing rapidly, and for the first time I felt like it might actually work. Fighting through the night and early into the morning, the Titan was close to collapsing, until it buried its head in a mountain. Seriously? I had to attack it to force it to move, carefully lining up its final shot. With one last hit, it fell unconscious. The taming process was extremely excruciating, but after what felt like an eternity, the Titanosaur was tamed. Relief swept over me, followed closely by exhaustion. With the Titan tamed, it was time to prepare it for the boss battle. I crafted a mountain of saddles and put on a gas mask to get ready. My next task was to collect dragon talons for the fight. So I headed back to the Wyvern Scar for a dragon killing adventure. Everything was going smoothly, until it wasn't. Somehow I managed to die while riding on the dragon. Thankfully, I'd set up beds nearby from my earlier egg runs, so I just respawned and made my way back on my Argent. I retrieved my Wyvern, whose name for some reason is SSSSSS. With my dino back in action, I returned to the Wyvern Scar. This time, I decided to go out on foot since my dragon was low on health. Surprisingly, I managed to deal a lot more damage this way, but of course this is ARK, so it didn't stay smooth for very long. And I died again. But I took the dragon down with me after countless battles and more than enough dragon killing. The next step is a massive, daunting task of throwing out all my dinos and saddling them up. With the dinos saddled and my Daedon loaded with cooked meat for healing, I was ready to face the Manticore. The fight started out confusing as the Manticore refused to land, instead staying above my dinos, raining attacks from the sky. It took an embarrassing amount of time to realize what's causing the glitch. Apparently, if you take a flyer into the Manticore arena, it glitches and never lands. Thanks, ARK, for the heads up. Not. My Rexes stood there helpless as the Manticore attacked from afar, knocking out every single one of my creatures. I had to pick them all up, and frustrated, I exited the game, hoping to fix the glitch. When I logged back in, my character was deleted, my items were gone, and furiously, I shut down the server, reloaded the save, and tried again. This time, I still didn't really know about the vulture glitch, and the Manticore stayed in the air. Finally, it hit me. My vulture was the problem. I quickly soulballed my vulture, and as soon as it was gone, the Manticore landed properly. The fight began in earnest. During phase 2, the rock elementals joined the fray, but my army of Rexes made short work of them. As I was focused on clearing a rock elemental, the Manticore fell. With the boss defeated, I picked up all my dinos, expecting to be teleported out of the arena. Instead, the game showed me the ending sequence.
You continue to impress, Survivor. As you have grown in strength, I have been searching Helena's memories.
Thinking I was safe, I downloaded my character to continue, only to discover once again that my character has been deleted. At this point, I was beyond frustrated. I could not continue with ARK. While there may be more ARK content in the future, for now, I'm switching gears to explore Fallout and other games. I do plan to eventually return for Aberration, but this experience has left me incomplete and disappointed. Wildcard, you've done it again. Thanks for the bugs, the frustration, and the chaos. And to you, my lovely citizens, thanks for sticking with me through this madness. Paw the like button, and until next time, I'll see you in the wasteland, survivors. Bye!